Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Evolving Democracy. We decided to do a little name change and adjust things a little bit. We've evolved, what we're doing has evolved, and so we're reflecting that in the things we're doing in the world as well. So stay tuned because you'll see more from us from that YouTube channel, etc. All right, so today, episode one, we're going to talk about excavating integrity. And what do we mean by that? We talk about love, we talk about compassion, we talk about things that are important to us as growing and evolving souls or humans. But this integrity piece really came to light this week when he who shall not be named made a very bold statement that happened to be the truth. Oops, that was very offensive and awful, but we know that's what he thinks anyway. So we're going to talk today about how
I don't know if Christy is frozen. I'll wait for her to come back. But we are talking about integrity today, so I will pick up if people can hear. Please put something in the chat. No. All right. I will invite her again and let her come back. Okay, Ben says, I am heard. All right, so Christy will come back. And just to pick up from where she was speaking about integrity, and we were thinking about how our integrity, our personal integrity, even if there are others in the world who are not acting in integrity, but integrity helps us push that sense of integrity out into the world. It raises the collective integrity. It raises love. It raises the sense of that we are all important. We all matter. And the more that we act in alignment with who we are and feel compelled to share what we think, to share how we feel, to act in a way that is in alignment with us, but also betters others, that we advocate for this sense of helping others, that we are better as a collective than we are individually. So we want to let that sense of integrity go beyond us in so many different ways. Now, when I think about integrity, I think about my own disappointment in so many politicians, business leaders who I feel didn't act from integrity. But I think back to the Women's March in 2017, and I was in DC, and I participated because I felt like I wanted to show those in Congress that there are millions of us who are behind them if they will stand up and say what they think and say what they feel. And I was very disappointed and perhaps way too naive to think that that could possibly happen. And we know from hearing people who are on the inside and have inside tracks to especially Republican politicians in Congress through that first term, more so, the more they speak out, the less connections they have, that politicians were saying one thing in public, and in private, they were saying something completely different. And I'm just going to pause to see if Christy can come back. I invited her again, but she is not here. So sorry. Okay, I'll just keep going. And there's something about being in integrity that feels very vulnerable. It goes at the sense of you're stripping away the masks that we wear, and we all wear masks. And by that stripping away, who we really are and what we really believe in and what we really care about is exposed. And that vulnerability leaves us open to people coming at us. And we know that people online can be vicious. And how do you weigh being vulnerable when there are people who are being mean? Christy!
Hello. Oopsie. Subtext threw me out, or my computer's internet's not working. So I'm on my phone, but at least we
Okay.
can talk to each other. This is good.
All right. Well, I was just riffing on integrity and talking about how, uh, what was I talking about? How it can be very vulnerable to say what you think and really express that openly because people can come at you.
People can come at you, and you can also feel, even if they haven't come at you yet, you can feel like, oh no, they might come at me. There's sort of this feeling of anticipation and a dread in a way of like, oh gosh, I put myself out there. This is really difficult and challenging. And that's something that I actually wanted to talk about today is the fact that when we misbehave, we tend to do it in particular ways. We tend to do it when we're, and I don't mean we specifically, but humans in general. If you've noticed online, people do things anonymously. They're solo, they're in the dark of their cave, and they can throw something out there and get away with it, so to speak. But if you want to be in integrity, you're going to own what you say everywhere you say it. You're going to be congruent with yourself. I can remember when I was younger, I used to have different friends that I thought, oh dear, I don't ever want them to cross pollinate because I'm a different person with each one of them. And it wasn't like overt necessarily. It just was like I was going along to get along. I was pleasing and whatever. Now I show up as myself wherever I go. Again, that's growing into integrity, excavating that feeling of like, oh, I can be myself congruently 100% all the time if I can. You know, at least that's my aspiration is to do that. So yeah, that vulnerability is definitely in there, but also the sense of like, can we own that this is who we are?
Mm. Well, and there's something really beautiful about owning who you are and speaking from that place. Uh, the example I thought of was Mallory McMorrow, who was a Michigan state senator or state rep, who a couple years ago had this powerful speech where she was speaking from her heart about things that had been said about her from her opponent. And she was saying, you know, I am a straight, uh, white, female, Christian mother, and then she said all the things she believed. It was incredibly powerful. It was raw and it was real, and it had an impact because we could tell it was real. There wasn't any facade there. She was speaking from her heart in a way that resonated because of that realness.
I think that's a big part of integrity is that resonance. Because when you're in integrity, you're on a certain wavelength, if you will, a certain kind of energy goes through where it's like solid and truthful and aligned with your heart and your mind and your soul and your being. And it's really powerful when we speak from that place versus a place that my IT guy just cut through, rather than a place of like, oh, I don't know, like, is this gonna be okay with you guys? Can I kind of have permission to say this? No, like she was full on. If you guys haven't seen that particular speech, it is powerful. it's inspiring to be like, oh wow, she really stepped up and said what's true for her. And the response was incredible.
Yeah. And even though I believe in my idealistic way that the truth will come out eventually, we can help it along by the more we speak from our own truth. I feel like that elevates truth in the collective.
That's exactly, I mean, that's the point of this live stream today, is this idea that we can make a difference. You know, that we can do what we can to be in integrity with ourselves, with others, and so on. And the more people that do that, the more we have a movement. You know, it's not just, oh, I'm in the darkness, you know, whistling by myself. It's, oh, if I do this and she does this and everyone else we know is working towards this aspiration, then how can that not change things? It just will. You know, versus as everyone's like, well, can I get away with, ha, or what can I not say, ha? You know, it's so easy to fall into these patterns if you hang around people that are like that. So the idea is to like, let's build our community around people who are like the things we aspire to. You know, it's if you're gonna learn how to play tennis, play with someone better than you are, so you can up your game. It's the same idea here. Can we up our game to become more and more of what we want and more of what we want to see? Because if we're this kind of person, then isn't it more likely we're going to get constituents that reflect this? Because
Mm,
people are going to vote based on, oh, I value integrity, therefore I want to vote for someone who has integrity.
right. And what popped into my head, well, a couple things popped into my head, but one of them is that so often the political establishments, and the Democrats are so guilty of this, that they try to package what they do based on what they think people want to hear. And it feels false. It doesn't feel genuine. And when you have someone like Mamdani in New York City, who is who he is and says what he thinks, and it feels different. And that kind of movement is, I read something this morning where there are more Democrats who are kind of trying to follow that model, which is be freaking real instead of instead of wearing a mask and trying to package what you think into some formula that no longer works, if it ever worked to begin with. You know, they are the Democratic establishment seems to be going by a playbook from the 1990s, when we are in not just a new century, but a new way of communicating and a new way of being. So let's up that game, and in that game, it is being real and true to yourself.
And true to the people you represent.
Yes.
You know, Mondami, he just comes across as this really warm, open-hearted person. And I say comes across, I believe that's who he is. I mean, I don't think this is him faking it. This is genuinely who he is, which I think is why people are just so attracted to that. Because it's so refreshing to have someone that's not about being strong and a domineering, pushy kind of way, but in a, can we be more compassionate? Can we be more loving? Can we bring more people into the fold? What can we do for people who are struggling? I mean, it's such a refreshing view to have someone who actually cares. Not that there aren't other examples. I mean, Barack Obama, for example, I mean, there's plenty of examples, but we need more and more of that. And we need more and more of that now, as soon as possible. Not only the passion, but also the caring and the desire for people to be comforted and comforting so that they have the things that they need to survive and thrive. And then we don't have this big split class system where the billionaires have everything and everyone else is struggling. Who wants that? Only the billionaires, not the rest of us.
Well, and it's, you know, there have always been politicians who care, and it may be that some of the people now who we might feel aren't being completely authentic, feel like, well, I have to do this to stay in office because then if I'm in office, I can help people. Well, I don't really feel like it's helping them stay in office if they're putting on a mask, if they are pretending to be something that they're not, saying words that aren't true to who they are. Then that doesn't resonate. There's some resonance that's important.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you're bringing up because it's almost like, and we know this is true, but it's it's kind of egregious when you think about it, that it has to do with marketing. How can I market myself to get the most votes, to have people be pleased with me or whatever? And obviously, you want to please your constituents to some extent. That's what you're doing. You're representing them. So you want to please them to some extent. But to be like, let me try this algorithm, let me try that algorithm, let me try this on, let me try that. Maybe I should be a little more warm. Maybe I should a little more like, how about if you be you in the most authentic way possible? That's what's going to connect. That's what's going to bring people in, not how'd you like that? How'd you like this? It's like, no, 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 no. This is who I am. And this is what I'm going to do for you. And I am going to fight for you really, really hard because you matter and the country matters and the world matters. There's a way in which this level of revealing how much you care, to me, it's almost like an instant win because it's not about fighting, it's not about power, it's about I want to see something. I mean, an aspirational politician is like my favorite.
Yeah.
I want to see us go over here. Oh, yes, please. Can I
Well,
sign up for that?
well, and that's the thing that gets people is the vision. There's a vision of what I want to see, not just I am against this. Although there is benefit right now in saying that I am against he who shall not be named, but there's a real need to say, this is what I'm for. This is what I believe in. And it's rare. I mean, we're advocating to do it for ourselves, but it's disappointing in politics. In my district, the representative race, the former representative is going against the current representative in the Democratic Party. We like both of them. We liked the last guy who left to try and go to the Senate and lost, and we like the one we have now. But they at first it was just a little bit, no, I don't know what's going on here. But now it's both of their ads are disingenuous and it's pissing me off.
Yeah, and we didn't get me started on my MAGA rep, who is just such an outright liar all the time. And so people are going to believe him. As I reported to you this week, we had made a couple unfortunate trips to the ER. Everything's okay. But in there, we saw people from the rural counties south of here that were in our room with us. And I have the real sense that they don't know what's going on. They probably are voting for him because it's mostly people down in the rural areas that are voting red in our district. And it was tempting to say something. I did not under those circumstances, but the idea that these people can churn out this false information and have people go, oh, he's really working for us. I'm like, no, he's lying to you. Someone also said they went to some meeting with him and he had a slimy, clammy hand. I was like, ew, of course he does. That's the bias I would have, that I wouldn't want to shake that man's hand. But the thing is that at least a good percentage of people, I think, will, first of all, see his voting record and see it's 100% MAGA, but also lean into how does it feel? Like he feels so smarmy, like so ew, that I would think at least some people would pick up on the vibe versus the Democratic candidate. She's a woman, she's a veteran, she's a single mom, she grew up in poverty, she picked cotton with her parents. I mean, she's just a real person. And I have every belief that this is what's going to win this election, that this high quality person who's honest and has integrity is going to prevail over this person who is so disingenuous, saying, oh, I would never vote against these things. And then he does. He's just a very blatant liar. But this is, again, the tricky part, and we're not in charge of this, of having people be able to see through the lies. But again, if we each do our part to be in integrity, that creates a climate, that creates an environment that supports greater integrity versus like, oh, well, everyone's corrupt. So, I mean, I think about in Russia where bribing is like such a thing. Like, when's the last time you bribed someone, Joni? I've never bribed anyone.
Never.
Right? I mean, I have had no need to bribe anyone. Even like, hey, could you give me a better seat if like, no, I just do what is sort of conventional. And that feels better to me than I've sort of pulled a fast one on someone. It just doesn't feel an integrity.
Yeah, well, I do have to say, as I always do, I'm not saying I have never been out of integrity, because I have.
Right, of course.
And it's something, as Christy said earlier, I've had to grow into that feeling, because sometimes it feels really hard to be in integrity. It feels icky sometimes if you're standing up against the status quo, or if you have to admit you made a mistake. Uh, that can it's uncomfortable. But one of the things I think we would be better off with, if we all learned how to live with discomfort and go through it, admit when we made a mistake, and admit also when we haven't quite lived up to the ideal that we hope for ourselves, not just for others. That the vision that I have, I'm the hero of my own story. We all are. And sometimes this hero has fallen short.
Let's talk about that discomfort a little bit. Because when I compare my discomfort with, ooh, oops, I screwed up, or I did something that I really should have known better, that kind of thing pales to me in comparison to the discomfort I feel watching people get harmed by
Mm.
this regime. I'm going to use that word. It is, first of all, temporary. Oh, I'm getting my internet connection is unstable. I hope you don't lose me again.
So do I.
Oh dear, this is not working out so well. Anyway, so I would much rather have that temporary discomfort for myself and own it and let the feeling rise and fall than this continuous bombardment of things that are out of integrity, that are external, that are just happening and happening and happening. So I advocate for the short term discomfort over the long term, acute, chronic, ongoing sort of discomfort that we're experiencing.
And that's a good point too, when you said you don't want to see someone else harmed. A lot of times it's easier for us to advocate for others, for us to stand up for others, which pushes through our sense of discomfort, than it is for us to not laugh at a joke, to get along, to go along. And those little things add up, though. That if you do laugh at a joke that you shouldn't, or you can tell it's in your body, you can feel it, and that matters too. So you can build up your integrity muscle by those smaller ways, uh, standing up for the things that aren't high risk. And the more you do that, the more you are building up, so that when something really matters and when it's really hard, you will stand up.
Exactly. I just started reading the book Fired Up by Shannon Watts. Have you read that book?
Uh-uh.
So it's a long story. I'm only getting started on it, but she started doing advocacy for gun control legislation, organizing moms for doing that kind of work. It wasn't that her children were directly impacted or anything. She had just gone to a yoga class after, I believe it was after Sandy Hook, and the yoga instructor said nothing about all those children being killed. And she was like, this has to change. So she left the yoga class, went home, and started Googling to find out if there was something similar to Mothers Against Drunk Driving for gun control, and there wasn't. So it doesn't have to be something that, oh, I got chills, doesn't have to be something that impacts you personally. It just has to be something that really sort of toggles your own integrity muscle and says, that is not okay. Like, that needs to change. Something has to be different. And it may be just a simple thing of going to vote, but it may be something where you become an advocate of some sort, or you participate in something you never expected you would. You know, we've talked in our old series about protesting and so on. Like, I would never have been a protester. And I cannot tell you how exhilarating it is to go out and be with like-minded people who are like, we want to see the right things done. We want to see people taken care of. We want to see a country where there is love and compassion and connection and this brave new world that we can visualize. Like it's right, it's so possible.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it isn't effortless. It's not going to happen unless people advocate and talk, communicate, go out in the world and make themselves known, so to speak.
And that vision is something that we often, in the old series, we often ended on that vision. So I'll just put it out there that vision is something that we need to keep, that it may be out of our grasp, but it shouldn't be out of our minds. A world where, a country where every person's voice matters, where everyone is able to live and grow to their highest potential, with fresh water and clean air and education and a sense of community, because that's what we want for ourselves. That's what we want for our friends and family, and that's what we want for every human being, not just in this country, but on the earth, and or wherever else humans might be. And that includes those with whom we disagree. We can't just want it for us and those who are like us. We have to want it for every soul, and we do.
And I think that's part of being in integrity, is wanting the same thing for all humans and not saying, well, we want to have it for us and we don't want to have it for other people. Is it difficult to embrace people that are doing things that are very harmful? Of course it is. But it's also possible to expand our love to include as many people as possible. And hopefully that also creates some healing that allows people to perhaps grow and evolve themselves and become different people. It's sort of like, you know, there are bullies that later in life go, oh, I was that person. And I don't want anyone else to be in the pain I was in when I was doing that, or to have the regrets that I have. We can grow and evolve. Thank goodness, right? It is so hopeful, so aspirational, so positive that we don't have to stay right where we are. Change is inevitable, thank goodness. Because evolution then is possible as well. We can keep becoming better. And that's why we named this evolving democracy. We want to see a democracy that has evolved beyond where it was before. It had some of the tenets that we believe in, but it wasn't executed ideally, perfectly, whatever. Nothing will ever be perfect, but we can aspire to keep growing and evolving and improving things. And why not do that rather than just laying back and going, oh, well, not for me to do.
Well, and if you can note, the first 4 letters of evolving is love, spelled backwards. And love, in the face of love, in an atmosphere of love, things that are ugly get exposed. Things that aren't right with people who are doing harmful things, that tension between what they're doing and what's right becomes greater. And in that tension, hopefully they will change and evolve and grow into that former bully who said, "Ooh, I was doing some things that weren't quite right."
And I just have to say that light shines most brightly in the darkness. We are in a dark time, we're having a dark experience, but we can bring light to this and shine and illuminate for people to know where to head and also to expose the things that are not okay for us, for the country, for humanity in general. So I come away very hopeful and fired up.
And thank you for being here. So let us turn love into action together.
Thanks for being here, everyone. Bye.